Hey everyone, welcome back to JarDev, and welcome to another video game book review. This time I am reviewing Bioshock from Rapture to Columbia, again by Third Editions. Thank you very much to Third Editions for sending me the book. Just an ebook version this time, not the physical copy, so there's no unboxing to this video, it's just a review at this point. Just to start, obviously, really enjoyed the book, loved the Bioshock games. I actually never played Bioshock 2, played Bioshock 1 and Infinite. Love both of those. Love the book. It's actually a fair bit shorter than the other two I've read, the Dark Souls one and the Metal Gear one. This was 192 pages. I think my ebook version was like 202 or something, so it kind of varies. But both Dark Souls and Metal Gear were like over 250 pages in the hardcover format. So this book's actually kind of divided a bit differently from the other two Third Editions books I've read. Instead of just being like 6 or 7 chapters all in order, this one's actually split into 3 parts, which have their own chapters. So part 1 is Bioshock 1 and 2. They're lumped together because they're like Bioshock 2 is a sequel and they're both set in Rapture. The second part is just on Bioshock Infinite, and then the third part is Beyond Bioshock, it's called. We'll talk about the chapters there. Before you get to those 3 parts though, there's an introduction, and there's a prologue first, which is like a page or 2, which is fine. The introduction it takes up an 1/8 of the book, and I hated this introduction. I was not a fan of the introduction. It takes up a huge amount of the book. It's very rambly, and a lot of what's being talked about in the introduction has zero to do with Bioshock. Part of it's good, like you get some good background on Ken Levine, Irrational Games, talking about like System Shock 1 and 2. But like really early in the introduction, it goes off on like this weird tangent about like PC versus console, and like it reads really anti-PC, which is weird. It's very unnecessary. There's like a whole bunch of stuff on like 1980s games that, like, honestly, there's too much. The introduction could have been summed up in, I don't know, probably about like a 1/6 of how long it took. There's a start to, part of the third chapter in the section about Bioshock 1 and 2 basically sums up the introduction in just that one chapter. It's way shorter than the introduction. That should have been the introduction. But now that I've got that out of my system, it did actually really annoy me. It was not a fun read, that introduction. Let's get into the book. So, part 1, Bioshock 1 and 2. The first chapter is the universe, which is the story of Bioshock 1 and 2. Another way that this is different from the Metal Gear book and the Dark Souls book is, as cool as the twist is at the end of Bioshock, the Bioshock story, there's not a ton to it. It's pretty easy to sum up, to be honest. Andrew Ryan wants to build a city under the water. He builds it. Everything goes wrong. This chapter is actually really short. And it's still a really cool story, but it doesn't take up like half the book like the Metal Gear Solid one or the Dark Souls one. The second chapter of part 1 is called The World. And it talks about the backgrounds and influences that go into the game, like Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. It's one of those. Of which Andrew Ryan is almost an anagram, it's very close. And this chapter is phenomenal, honestly. There's so much great research that went into this. It talks about the influence of Christianity, which you can see in like Adam and Eve and stuff like that, and like way less obvious allusions to Christianity, all the Greek influences and stuff. That chapter was fantastic. And there's the third chapter called Creation, which is like the background of Ken Levine, Irrational Games, how they went from System Shock to Bioshock. Like I said, this should have been the introduction. It summed up the introduction way better. And then chapter 4 is Decryption. It's the same as the other 2 books I've read from Third Editions. Just kind of talks about what kind of themes you see in the book, common themes. A lot of the stuff that you'd guess you'd read about from having played Bioshock 1 and 2. So then we go into part 2 of the book, which is on Bioshock Infinite, and the chapters are laid out exactly the same as the first part, Chapter 1, Universe, Chapter 2, World, Chapter 3, Creation, and Chapter 4, Decryption. Not too much to say. Like, the story of Bioshock Infinite is way more complex than, like, both stories of 1 and 2. And it's still fairly short. There's just quite a bit to explain with the end, but it's still a pretty short chapter, because apart from the end, it's a fairly simple story. But it was really cool to read the story of Bioshock Infinite in chronological order. No spoilers if you haven't played the game. In Chapter 2, World, it talks a lot about the themes present in the game, like racism and such. And then again, Chapter 3, Creation, really, really good chapter. I actually didn't know this, but Ken Levine did say after Bioshock Infinite that he physically could not handle making another Bioshock game, because it took so much out of him, like mentally, physically, emotionally. Like he felt he didn't really see his family too much during the time of making Bioshock. So that's why there's just the 3 Bioshock games. He said he could not handle making another one. And then Chapter 4, Decryption, same as in the first part. This one was also very rambly. I've got a little note here that says it rambles about fairs in other games for too long. And it really does. That's something I've really started to notice in 3rd edition's books. It's they'll pick up on one thing. For example, in this one, it's like fairs, like amusement park kind of fairs. And instead of just talking about fairs in Bioshock Infinite, it spends like 2 or 3 pages talking about fairs in other random games. And it has nothing to do with Bioshock Infinite. If you cut out all of that, it would still be, you get nothing else from having those bits in there. So it's weird. I hope it's not a thing in every single 3rd edition's book, but I definitely really started to notice it in the Bioshock one. And then part 3, we've got Beyond Bioshock. So the first chapter is called Spin-Offs. Very short chapter again. There's not actually that many Bioshock spin-offs. It's like there's a movie that hasn't happened. It does talk about books, and there is a fantastic book by John Shirley. I think it's just called Bioshock Rapture. And it is a fantastic book. It talks all about... It's basically the whole story of, like, pre-Bioshock. It's like everything up to everything goes wrong in Bioshock. It's really cool seeing, like, how Rapture starts and what it's like before everything goes wrong. Really great book. Highly recommend that one. It's fiction. Really, really enjoyable book. Chapter 2 is the chapter on music. Very good chapter. I actually didn't remember this from when I played Bioshock Infinite, but like the details they went to in all the games, but specifically Infinite, where they made like time-fitting versions of modern music. Like there's a bit where they're on the boardwalk, and there's a cover of Girls Just Want to Have Fun in the background, done on like was it like the keyboard organ thing? Fantastic. Totally didn't notice it the first time I played Bioshock Infinite. And it's a cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So the chapter on music's really good, because music is huge in Bioshock games. And the final chapter of part 3 and of the whole book is chapter 3, Legacy. It kind of reiterates that Ken Levine's done with Bioshock, like all the teams done with Bioshock. 2K has said that they are open to like re-exploring the Bioshock universe. It may happen, it may not. It hasn't for a while. Like the movie, it's just kind of dead right now. Like work has been done on it, but nothing much is happening with it. And it also kind of talks about like how much of a lasting influence these 3 games have had, and they are pretty impactful games, I'd say. So yeah, that was Bioshock from Rapture to Columbia, published by 3rd Editions. Authored by, I'm going to butcher these names because they are all French, Nicolas Corsier, this one's not French, Mehdi El Kanafi, and Raphael Lucas. Don't think I butchered those too bad. You can get it on 3rd Edition's website. I think you can get it on Amazon. You can get it in hardcover or ebook format. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you again to 3rd Editions for sending me a copy of the book to review. Absolutely love it. Love reading these books. Love talking about them. And I will see you guys later. Bye!